We are gearing up for the start of the Stanley Cup Playoffs with an episode dedicated to the loyal listeners of Locked On New York Rangers, a very special mailbag edition. We're going to talk team chemistry, Patrick Kane, and the importance of continuing to be patient with your young players. All that and much, much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 805 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And yeah, as I just said, basically just going to do a mailbag edition here. Going to go into the YouTube comments section, which is always a fascinating place, but, it's really cool with Locked On Rangers because you guys always are very respectful of each other and a lot of differing opinions out there, but everybody always, keeps it clean and, respects the other person's opinion and everything. So that's great. It's a really cool community that we've built here of, obviously passionate, diehard New York Ranger fans. So we're going to go ahead and not waste any time here. I'm going to minimize the screen for those of you watching here on YouTube. And for those of you not watching on YouTube, don't worry about it. I got you covered too. I'm going to read some comments that were left on the YouTube comment section for various recent episodes of Locked On New York Rangers. And we're going to start with a comment here from Christopher Big Bear. This is an episode where I was talking about Patrick Kane and, how he's done so far with the Rangers and, mentioning the fact that he's got decent numbers. He's gotten a couple of points here and there. There's times where he's looked like Patrick Kane, but there's also times where it seems like he's kind of moving at half speed. It's just been a little bit underwhelming. But, I'm still hopeful, keeping my fingers crossed that, as we've talked about on here, he is someone who is obviously just kind of saving his energy, saving his gas for the playoffs, because obviously he's on the back nine of his career. And it's possible that he knows himself and he realizes that the playoffs are coming up and he's got to do what he can to kind of basically just coast right now and then really step on the gas in the playoffs and do everything he can to help this team win its first Stanley Cup since 1994, and he can win the fourth Stanley Cup of his NHL career. But getting to the comment from Christopher Big Bear here is what he had to say. Patrick Kane is not here to help us win regular season games. Patrick Kane is explicitly here to help us in the playoffs. If he gets hurt, it was all for nothing. I think the organization knows that, and I think management knows that, and I think Patrick Kane knows that. I think if need be, Patrick Kane will sacrifice the rest of his career to help us come playoff time. I am not concerned about Kane. And then we also had Nando's son here also weighing in and responding to the comment from Christopher, and he says, "Well said, bud. I agree with you on that 100. And yeah, I think there's certainly some merit to what both of you are saying there. I mean, to your point, it's entirely possible that Patrick Kane is very well aware of the fact, ever since he got traded here, that this team is going to be going to the playoffs. And as I just mentioned, he's got to conserve his energy. And, if there's anybody capable of flipping the switch as soon as the playoffs start and basically becoming a completely different player and taking his talents to, their highest level, I would say Patrick Kane is probably that guy. He's played well over 100 career Stanley Cup playoff games. It's obvious that he knows what he's doing. And, you just hope that that's exactly what's going to happen. He'll step on the gas and he'll flip that light switch, use whatever analogy you want to use, but that he'll take his game to a whole nother level come playoff time. It is certainly possible. Right now, I think the concern that some Ranger fans have, and a little bit of concern from me, is we just haven't seen enough of that. We haven't seen that guy, Patrick Kane, the greatest American-born player ever. All the awards that he's won. I think a 9-time All-Star, 3-time Cup champion, Conn Smythe winner, Art Ross winner, Ted Lindsay winner. The list just goes on and on and on. And we just haven't quite seen that guy. But hopefully we do see him come Stanley Cup playoff time. We also have a comment here that comes to us from the Nature Boy. I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is not Ric Flair. I guess you never know for sure. But the Nature Boy said, "I remember when Espo, Marcel Dion, and Guy Lafleur played for the Rangers. Same story. We get a legend after they were already a legend. Mess was the one that delivered." Yeah, Messier, safe to say he delivered in a big, big way for this New York Ranger team. And there's some truth to what you said as well. And there's also some more contemporary examples of that as well. The Rangers got Eric Lindros when he was well past his prime. Pavel Bure is another name that definitely comes to mind. They go out and they kind of would reach for these players that were clearly winding down in their career, and it just never came together. And we got to hope that that does not repeat here with Patrick Kane coming over to the Rangers. Even if it does, though, I'll never fault the Rangers. I'll never fault Chris Drury for going out and getting Patrick Kane. finding a way to do salary cap gymnastics and make this happen, because even if you're not a big Patrick Kane fan, you got to admit that the Rangers are better off with, Patrick Kane in the playoffs than they would be with, say, either Johnny Brodzinski or Jake Leschyshyn, which in all likelihood is who would be the 12th forward for this team if Patrick Kane was not here. So, for those reasons, I think you still have to feel good about the fact that they got Patrick Kane, and they certainly got him for a reasonable price as well. A couple other comments on this video talking about Patrick Kane. We got a comment here from Lawrence Cruz. He says, definitely Kane was setting Mika up for 40. And what he's talking about here, just to kind of pause me reading his comment here, the Rangers had a 2-on-0. Mika passed to Kane. Kane had a great chance to shoot, tried to force it back to Mika, and if Mika scored there, it would have been his 40th goal. So a little bit of context was needed there. But yes, this is what Lawrence has to say about it. Once again, definitely Kane was setting up Mika for 40. This game was never in doubt. Meaningless as far as the standings. Kane has displayed his marksmanship shooting. Vet who will get it done. And then JSK responded to Lawrence here. I pretty much agree. I think he's really not giving a bleep until the playoffs, which also, given his hip, is probably fine. But in the flashes he's shown, it's still there, it seems. So I think it'll come together in the playoffs. And yeah, I'm very, very hopeful for that. It seems like Ranger fans are kind of on one extreme or the other, where it's either like, don't worry about it, he'll be fine, he's going to set the world on fire once the playoffs start. Or it's the opposite. It's like Patrick Kane is no good anymore. He's killing this team and this, that, and the other thing. I think the truth probably lies somewhere in between. And I tend to be a little bit more on the optimistic side that Patrick Kane will dial it up a notch in the playoffs. I don't know if we're going to get prime Patrick Kane leading the league in points, Conn Smythe winner and all that good stuff. I don't know that he'll take his game quite to that level. I'd love to be wrong about that. But I do think he's going to be a productive player for the Rangers come Stanley Cup playoff time. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. I want to get into a couple other of your guys' comments that you've left in the YouTube section here. And like I said, we will do that in just a second. But first, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're about to have. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And to just go ahead and keep everything rolling here, we're going to move on to the next video here. There were a couple things I wanted to get to in this one here. Robert Forster, talking about the Ranger win, says, looked good last night. Also pretty pleased with Harper sticking up for his mates and showing some snarl last night. Yeah, I totally agree. Ben Harper, he's out there looking to protect his teammates. He's done a great job with that this season. And, there's some Ranger fans that don't really get it. They don't really get why he was extended for 2 years after this one, when he was almost out of hockey before this season began, and obviously signed a PTO with the Wolfpack. I think it's a cool story. He had to scratch and claw his way back into the NHL, carved out a decent role for himself with the Rangers, And, for a number 7 defenseman, making just a shade over the league minimum, I think the Rangers are doing just fine in that department. And yeah, he did a great job in that game against the Lightning, that crazy game. 4 fights, all kinds of fisticuffs, all kinds of just crazy things happening. Igor Shesterkin getting run, and Ryan Lindgren trying to attack. Who was it that did that? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, and I can't. I should be able to remember that, but regardless, Ryan Lindgren sticking up for Igor. But yeah, Ben Harper's been doing that all season. He really watches out for his teammates out there, and that's obviously very nice to see. And then we'll continue along here to our next episode in the comment section there. This is a question from Georgia Bulldog Will, and he actually is referencing something that we talked about. Adam and I did this crossover episode, Locked On Rangers and Locked On Lightning, and Georgia Bulldog Will responded to a comment that we made about the Atlanta Thrashers. He says, it was 2007, and boy, do I miss the Atlanta Thrashers. He's referring to a situation where the Rangers played the Thrashers in the first round of the playoffs. Rangers swept them right out of the playoffs and basically right out of existence, because that was also the last season of Atlanta Thrashers hockey. And yeah, I feel you, man. I mean, it's, they didn't have that big of a following, but I'm sure, listen, I mean, in the entire city of Atlanta, I'm sure there were some true diehards there that love going to the games, love supporting that team, and certainly have missed them since they're gone. The closest example I can think of that was, there's a minor league baseball team around here in Connecticut called the New Haven Ravens. Seriously, like 100 points to anybody that knows what I'm talking about right now. But they were in existence for probably about 10 years, and their last season was my senior year of high school, and my friend and me went to just a ton of games that year. We went to the last game ever. Really a cool environment, and I still miss that team to this day, just to kind of throw out an example. And I never got to a Danbury Trashers game, which is my greatest regret of anything related to sports in my life. I just wasn't aware of them when they were around, so that's unfortunate too. And it would have been really cool to see a Danbury Trashers game back in the day. We also had a couple of predictions for this game as well. This comes to us from Hockeyest Guy Alive. Great name there. So he mentioned, going into this Rangers Lightning game, he pretty much did knock it out of the park and almost got it exactly perfect as far as his predictions were concerned, because Adam and me both did predictions as far as who was going to win that game between the Rangers and Lightning. Hockeyest Guy Alive says 6-2 Rangers, not even close, 3 fights. And then he also wrote, and I got to go ahead and like these comments here, because that is, you talk about knocking it out of the park. Yeah, I mean, he got it pretty much right on the nail. The Rangers won the game 6-3 instead of 6-2, and there were actually 4 fights instead of 3 fights. But hey, you know what? Close enough. He really nailed that one. Did Hockeyest Guy Alive? Let's see, a couple other predictions here. So this one comes to us from Juan S., and he's talking about Rangers Lightning. This New York-Tampa clash will not be a repeat of the 2022 conference matchup where the Lightning beat the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. Tampa will probably win 2 games, with the Rangers will come out victorious. Yeah, I'm hopeful that if there is a rematch between the Rangers and Lightning, that it's a different conclusion to the story this year. I mean, I think for sure the Rangers have a better team this year than they did last year, but as we all know, that doesn't really guarantee you anything come Stanley Cup playoff time. And I'd love to see a rematch between the Rangers and Lightning, because if we get one, it means that it's happening in the Eastern Conference Final, and that the Rangers have gotten through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and maybe they can get some payback against the Tampa Bay Lightning and finally not allow the Lightning to go to the Stanley Cup Final. But first things first, Juan, we got to get there, man, because there's going to be a lot of really good teams in the playoffs in general this year, but certainly in the Eastern Conference. It's going to be just an absolute bloodbath, and I just hope the Rangers can come out on top. I'm feeling very confident about this team, but it's certainly not going to be easy. They're going to be in a dogfight in the first round. Hopefully they get through it, and then we just take it from there at that point. We're going to keep everything rolling here. I want to continue, going through these comments here. It's always a fun doing these mailbag editions with you guys here. But first, what we got to do is let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. and they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now, you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right, head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank us later. All right, we'll go ahead, keep everything rolling right along here and talk about a couple of other comments that you guys left here. And, I mentioned in the intro here that I want to talk a little bit about, the concept of staying patient with the kids. And I think Pat McMahon here, with his comment or her comment, hit the nail on the head here. Mika spent 5 years in Ottawa before he came to the Rangers. He was a first-round choice and considered a mild bust because of his stats. Many great players like Marchand and others took years to establish themselves. That's why it's so important for the New York Rangers to hold on to the kid line and their young D. COVID, half seasons, they're only scratching the surface. Patience will be rewarded. And yeah, I tend to agree. It's been a process. I think at this point, all of us would probably have expected better offensive numbers from guys like Alexis Lafreniere and guys like Kakko. But listen, not everybody gets to be Alex Ovechkin or Connor McDavid right out of the starting blocks here. There's a lot of examples, and you mentioned a couple of them here, both Mika and Brad Marchand, of guys who, put up okay numbers when they came into the league, but really didn't do a whole lot. With Marchand, it's interesting because, he was basically expected to be, I think at best, like a third or fourth line player and somebody that, would mix it up and play physical and play the mental game, and he does all that, but he also became a heck of an offensive player as well. I think he went way past what people thought his ceiling would be. With Mika, it's a little different because I want to say he was drafted like 4th overall. It was like 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere in there by the Ottawa Senators. But yeah, he didn't really set the world on fire with Ottawa, and the Rangers pretty much bought low on him. They had the opportunity to pounce there, and they took that opportunity, trading away Derek Brassard for Mika Zibanejad. And Mika, comes to the Rangers and, just a steady climb. His first couple years with the Rangers wasn't like phenomenal numbers, but he was moving in the right direction, getting better and better. You could see that upside. You could see that potential. And now, he's having probably the best season of his career right now and has just become one of the most complete centers, one of the best all-around players in this entire league. So I'm with you, man. And Mika's like, how old is he now? Like 28 or 29, somewhere in there. So it can take some time. And the thing about Chytil, Kakko, Lafreniere, I think all three of them, even though maybe you expect a little bit more sometimes, all three of them have gotten better and better and become more and more confident since they've come into the league with every season that goes by. We're just looking for them to do it maybe a little bit faster, a little bit better of a pace. But I think that's an excellent point there. And I think for sure, you got to be patient with these young guys. You can't be trading away, Alexis Lafreniere for a rental of some kind. You just can't do that. And I'm glad the Rangers did not do that. So we got a comment from Jocelyn Cooper here. Jocelyn, every time that she leaves a comment, it looks just like this. It's just a bunch of smiling emojis, and she does it pretty much every video that I record here, every episode after the Rangers have won a game. So, you know what? The Rangers have been playing well. Jocelyn, I want you to continue doing that, especially in the playoffs. Every time the Rangers win a game, I want to see those smiling emoji faces somewhere in the comments section of every episode of Locked On New York Rangers. I'm superstitious enough that I want to see that trend continue there. So good stuff there. We got another comment from Robert Forshner as well. Excellent team effort. Finished the season strong, guys. And I think for the most part, they've done that. There have been a couple games where, a little bit lackluster, but victim of circumstance, playing the night after you had that war with Tampa Bay. And, this most recent game against Buffalo, the Rangers should have won that game. But credit to Buffalo for rallying and doing everything they can to keep their playoff hopes alive. But just one game left, and let's hope the Rangers can close it out with 2 more points, perhaps even jump the Devils and or the Canes. We'll see what happens there. We'll do a couple more here before we call it a day. This one comes to us from DNAZ13. He says, added too many high-end wingers and effed up your chemistry, Rangers. And then White GD writes, let's see, that would be 1 billion% correct. Yeah, no, I don't agree with this. I mean, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of people that wanted the Rangers to add more grit at the trade deadline here, but you can't tell me that adding Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane has made the Rangers a worse team. Because imagine that Tarasenko and Kane aren't here right now. How are you filling out this lineup? Because, Kaapo, Kakko, I think all of us kind of like the kid line. I mean, you could take him and put him, on the top line, maybe with Mika and Kreider. You could take Lafreniere and you could take him away from left wing and move him to the right wing and put him out there with Panarin and Trocheck. These are all options, but then you really run out of depth. Who makes up the third line at that point? What they would probably do, the kid line would probably stay together as the third line, and then you'd probably have, Goodrow and Vesey playing in top six roles, and then you would have guys like Johnny Brodzinski and Jake Leschyshyn in the lineup. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier in today's episode, but who would you rather have right now? Would you rather have Tarasenko and Kane, or would you rather have Leschyshyn and Brodzinski? I think the answer is pretty obvious. And, there's things to nitpick, certainly about Patrick Kane, maybe about Vladimir Tarasenko as well, although I don't see too many Ranger fans who are upset with Tarasenko. I think a lot of us are very happy, first of all, that the Rangers picked him up, and secondly, very happy with the performance that he's had, the way he's fit in with his new team. He's done a heck of a job, and I think he has a big postseason run forthcoming. He did the same thing with the St. Louis Blues, won a cup there, seems to come up big in some big spots. So, I have to disagree there. I certainly respect your opinion, but you can't tell me that Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko mess up this entire Ranger team and are going to be the reason why the Rangers don't win the Stanley Cup if they do not win the Stanley Cup. To me, those are two good additions for this team. PJ Sebado, I hope I'm saying that right, left a comment. I was really struggling in this episode. I was trying to pronounce the name of one of the opposing players, and Peterka is the way to say it. So he wrote, "You got it, Peterka." So I thought that was pretty funny. Let's see what else we got here. Let's go with, let's go ahead and jump to the next episode. A couple of people were getting concerned because the Rangers had a little bit of a lackluster performance here, but we're getting toward the end of today's episode, and I certainly want to end the episode on a positive, some good things that happen. And this one comes to us. We got a comment here from Oogle Boogle. Where do you guys come up with these YouTube names? Like, I gotta know. You guys are very creative. Oogle Boogle writes in the YouTube comment section, Mika definitely took a pay cut. And then White GD responded to Oogle Boogle here, and he wrote, "Good thing they're not allowed to renegotiate their contracts once they're signed. We would be bleeped." Yeah, I think for sure. Mika Zibanejad at this point is an absolute steal, $8.5 million per season. When they signed him, it was a little bit pricey, but I was completely on board with it. You have to ensure your future at the center position. Great centers, great two-way centers, elite two-way centers do not grow on trees in this league. And I think re-signing Mika was the thing to do there. And there was all that debate about, some Ranger fans want Jack Eichel. I'm thinking, man, forget about Jack Eichel. We've got one of the best centers in hockey here. Mika does not have a neck issue like Jack Eichel does, and I'm not making light of Jack Eichel's injury. I'm just stating the facts here. He's got a neck injury, and certainly there's at least some concern there. Mika Zibanejad, we know, has embraced New York and has thrived here. He is loved by his teammates. He's somebody that at the time when he was re-signed was in the running to perhaps even be the next New York Ranger captain. Of course, he's not the Ranger captain, but he's an alternate and certainly one of the elder statesmen and one of the leaders on this team. And yeah, for $8.5 million a season, I really do believe, right now at least, that Mika Zibanejad is an absolute steal. Got another comment here from Eddie Edwards. Trade Gaudreau then. He's paid way too much for a fourth liner. Yeah, this is something that I've brought up from time to time, and you try to you look at the salary cap situation. How can we twist ourselves into a pretzel and re-sign this guy and acquire that guy and trade for this guy and still stay under the salary cap? And it's tough to do it. And one guy that kind of, I don't want to say has been a target of mine because I really like Barclay Goodrow, and I feel like he's got a big moment in him perhaps in the playoffs coming up here. Does a lot of the little things, just a gritty player for the New York Rangers and one of the leaders on this team as well, two-time former Stanley Cup champion. But you look at right now, the players on the Rangers, you go to cap friendly, okay, this guy's making this much and that guy's making that much, and how are we going to do this? How are we going to stay under the salary cap. Barclay Goodrow, I believe, at $3.61 million per season. He can only block a trade to half the teams in the league. So if the Rangers are in a spot where the money is tight and you got to re-sign this guy and do this and that and the other thing, and somebody has to go, somebody's a salary cap casualty, I could see a situation where it ends up being Barclay Goodrow. And by no means do I want to see him leave this team, but just looking at the reality of the situation, I'm not so sure that Barclay Goodrow is going to play out that entire contract with the New York Rangers. But we shall see. Maybe there's a way for them to keep him in the fold, throughout at least the next couple of seasons here. We got a comment from RJ Frost here, because I think I mentioned Pavel Buchnevich in this episode. Speaking of Buchnevich, his development trajectory was quite similar to what Chytil's is like. For the first number of years, he didn't live up to expectations, and I remember the fan base being quite disappointed and critical of him. It wasn't until the end of his fourth year, and especially his fifth year, that he finally became the player everyone hoped he would be. Yeah, I think you knocked it out of the park with that comment. I see a lot of similarities there, where, flashes here and there from Buchnevich in the first couple of years, flashes here and there from Filip in the first couple of years. Chytil, at times, could get really hot. I think it was kind of the same thing with Buchnevich. Both of them certainly struggled with their consistency. And, Filip having what could be considered a breakout season here. And I'm also willing to bet, RJ, and I don't know how you feel about the Buchnevich trade, but a lot of the Ranger fans that we're furious at Drury, that will never forgive him for trading Pavel Buchnevich. I get the feeling a lot of those same fans, not all, but a good amount of them, were also fans who were saying, as recently as the year before that, or certainly 2 years before that, trade Buchnevich. Buchnevich is no good. Buchnevich can't play this, that, and the other thing. That's just the way it goes sometimes, though. And, I'm glad that Pavel Buchnevich has done fairly well for himself with the Blues. Obviously, team success hasn't really occurred this season. They were sellers at the deadline, trading Tarasenko, trading Ryan O'Reilly, and also Mikala, among other players. So, I do see some parallels there, though, between Buchnevich and Filip Chytil. I figure we could pretty much call it there for today. This is a pretty funny comment, though. This is one of those really short videos that I posted. I was reacting to, the re-signing of Filip Chytil, because we know he's going to be in the fold past this season. He signed an extension, and S. Flett writes, it's the only comment on this video, he just writes, Drury. And I've said this multiple times. Chris Drury, I think, has had a lot more hits than misses during his tenure as the Ranger GM. He hasn't been perfect, but I think he's gotten a lot more right than he's gotten wrong. Let's see. So I wanted to end on this comment. A couple more comments here. We got one from David Roth, though. Roth, definitely a very loyal listener of this show. And, going into this offseason here, he made a comment about, Trocheck, Copp, Strome, and Vatrano, and, kind of comparing and contrasting all of them. And, we'll get to that in just a second here. But to kind of just set the stage for this, obviously coming into this offseason, a lot of conjecture about what the Rangers should do. Should they re-sign any of these rentals? And then as far as second-line center, it kind of felt like it was either going to be Strome, Copp, or Trocheck. It ends up, of course, being Trocheck. The Rangers let the other two walk. But this is what David Roth had to say. And this comment is from almost 2 weeks ago, so the numbers are going to be a little bit different now, but the general point will still be there. But this is what Roth had to say. Frank Vatrano, 18 goals, 18 assists, 36 points in 73 games. Ryan Strome, 14 goals, 22 assists, 36 points in 74 games. Andrew Copp, 9 goals, 31 assists, 40 points in 73 games. And Vincent Trocheck, 20 goals, 39 assists, and 59 points in 74 games. Case closed. And I completely agree. He's certainly outplayed all of those players. And that's just looking at points. I mean, you look at other aspects of the game as well. I think certainly on the faceoff circle, Vatrano's not a center, so you can't include him there. But Trocheck is a better, face-off taker than either Copp or Strome. I think he's a better defensive player overall. And just all-around game, a little bit more physical maybe than some of those players as well. And somebody that can pinch in the penalty kill. Some of those other guys can play the PK also. But, Vincent Trocheck has felt like a glove. I think he's done a heck of a job for the Rangers this season. And they made the right decision to go with Trocheck above any of those aforementioned players. The one thing that I'll say in defense of really all three of Vatrano, Strome, and Copp, none of them play for good teams. Vatrano and Strome are on the Ducks, who are just bad. Let's just call it like it is. And, Copp's on the Red Wings, and, they were playing a little bit better this season, and I think they're going in the right direction, but they've certainly tailed off as well. It's a situation where I think the Rangers certainly made the right decision. And then I'll do one more comment here from Robbie Neal Zucker, who actually left several comments on this video here. And let's go with this one. They are one of the worst teams at goals off forechecks and goals off rebounds. Kid line and fourth line play below the goal line. The top six don't. I think this was at that stretch. There was a game where the Rangers played where clearly the third line and the fourth line outperformed all of the top six. But I think that was kind of, a little bit of a fluke. I mean, not a fluke that the third line and fourth line played well, but it was one of those games where the top six for the Rangers just didn't really show up, just did not have a good night. I have noticed, that the line that really goes to work behind the net is the kid line. I think as far as just pure talent, the top six, they'll make up for, any deficiencies they may have in terms of playing behind the net just by, pure talent and the things that they can do on the ice. And I know in the playoffs, you got to get some gritty goals. I think the Rangers will do that. The top six, they get a gritty goal every now and then from time to time. But, I think to your point, kid line, the fourth line, they were really showing a lot of grit on that night. And Robbie Neal Zucker also said talented, but no, not physical. And I disagree. We debunked this myth in a recent episode where, the Rangers, they're up there. They're top 10 in the league in hits per game. I think they were like 8th. They've gotten into about the 7th or 8th most fights in the league. So this is a team that doesn't back down from anybody. And I think sometimes people look at all the talent that the Rangers have, and they just kind of assume that they're lacking in the grit department. And I don't think that's true. They might have more talent than grit, but that doesn't mean that they're lacking grit as a whole. So, just wanted to share my thoughts on that. But, you know what? Love doing these episodes, guys. Keep it coming as far as the comments in the YouTube section. We'll do episodes like this from time to time. It's always a ton of fun. And as I mentioned, I wanted to at least do one more here, before the playoffs start. So I'm glad we got to do that. That will do it for today, though, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. Now you make your second listen Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.